Hi YouTube, and welcome back to my channel, and we're on Vlogmas day 6. So I thought, since for anyone who's watched my channel at all will know, my brain tends to go off on tangents no matter what my topic is. So today I'm going to talk about my brain going off on tangents all the time, because why not? I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only person in the world that has this happen, but I think I'm definitely part of the percentage of the population where my brain tends to go off on tangents probably a little more often than most normal people, and I don't know if that's an indication of anything. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just who I am. I remember, it's one of the reasons why when I was younger I used to daydream a lot. I just can't seem to focus on a single thing. And you know, I've had people say, well, maybe you have ADHD, or maybe you have a form of autism, or maybe you have this or that and the other, and like, it's never been something that's impacted my life negatively, you know, anything where I've had to go see a doctor or a specialist and be diagnosed or go on any kind of medication or anything like that. I think it's primarily a source of frustration for any of my friends. I know it used to frustrate my husband to no end, because we'd have a conversation and all of a sudden, like in the middle of the conversation, whatever we were talking about would spark my brain to think, oh, well, what about this? And then what about this? And then what about, you know, and I would just keep branching off, and I would never stick focused to whatever the topic was that we were originally talking about. And he always had to try to reel me back in. So it's just something with my brain. I don't know what it is. It's me, it's who I am, and it's just the way it is. But it does have some advantages. I mean, yes, it can be annoying to have a conversation with me if I'm gonna do that, but it's proven very useful when it comes to me doing research. Because I'll be researching one thing and it'll make me like, oh, well, if this is like that, well, why don't, you know, what about this piece and what about that piece? And so I end up doing deeper research into different topics because my brain is constantly like wondering like, oh, this is interesting, well, I want to know more about this, and then I branch off here and like, oh, let me find out more about this. And so it actually has made my ability to research, or at least get more diversity in the research that I do, and trying to write novels and things, you have to end up doing a lot of research. And back when I was in grad school and in college, obviously I had to do research, especially grad school, because I wrote a lot of papers for some of my classes, and then of course I did well, I didn't do a thesis. Like most people, when they get their master's, they have a master's thesis. I did a project, and this was a new concept. At least it was a new concept. This was in the late 90s, but this was a new concept in my department. I graduated from the Department of Journalism and Media Communication. At the time it was Journalism and Technical Communication, but they've changed it in the last 20 years. But they just introduced what they called Plan B or Track B. And for people who were working full-time, because I was actually working full-time in my career doing business, well, I was doing web development. They called me a business analyst. Eventually I became a web analyst. It was kind of complicated, but I was working full-time at a tech company while I was taking grad school classes. And so the amount of time was doing a thesis. They were going to require me to try and work on it a minimum of 20 hours a week each semester, and there's just no way that I could do that with my full-time job. With my classes, I originally started off as a full-time grad student, which was completely insane. I was taking 9 credits. It was insane. Long story short, don't take full-time grad classes while you're working full-time in your career. Just bad idea. The only reason I was doing that is because they actually offered me a full-ride scholarship for 1 year. So not for the whole time that I was going to be in school, but for 1 whole year, so 2 whole semesters, they were going to pay for all of my tuition if I was a full-time student. So I was like, well, I can't pass that up. It was too good of an opportunity. So I took the scholarship and just basically went insane and lost all my hair. I did. I actually started losing like clumps of hair just started coming out. I'm grateful it kind of grew back, but yeah. So that was the thing. And after that, I only took one class a semester, and that was it. Just one class and working full time, and that was it. And eventually, it took me 4 years total to get my master's, mainly because instead of taking 2 years, so I did a one full-time semester, I did, but then after that, because I cut down to only one course per semester, number one, and then, so that took me like an extra year, so that I would have finished in 3 years, but then after I finished all the courses, I still took another year to finish my project. And the nice thing with the project was that there was no minimum or maximum weekly hour requirement working on it. I just kind of had to take a continuing education credit, and that was it. And I just worked on it until I was done. And it took me a year to do that. And there was no way I was going to take anything that required me to do 20 hours a week. But yeah, so that was grad school, and see, once again, tangents. So research, yes. The fact that the tangents really help me get much more diverse information when I do research. I don't kind of stay focused on just one thing. I kind of look at all sorts of things, and I kind of get to tie them all together, and it actually makes for more interesting information. Not just for the research papers and stuff I had to write in grad school, but for the novels I write and the fan fiction stories that I write. Because sometimes I have a particular idea in mind of what I want to include in the story, and so I start researching it, and then I go off on all these tangents and I find out all this other information, and it actually makes me rethink the original approach I had, and I'm like, oh, it would be better if I did it this way instead of that way. And things like that. So for one example, I have this thing in my novel where humans tend to age. If they hit 30, they age and die very quickly if they don't get bonded with another human being. I won't go into all the details of how that works, but the thing that makes the bonding work and helps to extend their life turns out to be an alien virus on the planet that they're currently living on. They're not on Earth, they're on another planet, and they're living with, if you've heard me talk about my novel at all, they're living with another sentient species that they call elves, because they look like elves, but they're actually just an alien culture, and they actually call themselves Athlana, not elves. Athlana is the word I came up for them. Just getting on that tangent. But yes, and I originally, my thought with that whole bonding process and everything else, and like I said, I'm not going to go into all of the details, but I was originally thinking of using bacteria as the vector to help with the life extension, and it has to do with the chromosomes and their telomeres, and it's a science fiction novel. I'm trying to be as science accurate as possible, with the caveat that this is happening on an alien planet 10,000 years from now. So I have some leeway here and there, and so this particular thing, when mixed with a number of other things, gets hyperactive and just has this particular consequence of repairing telomere damage. Okay, that's the nutshell of it. And I was originally thinking bacteria, but then with my research and going off on all these tangents, and I was like, oh, okay, telomeres are inside the cell, bacteria usually don't go inside the cell, but viruses do. Let me use a virus instead. And so this is a beneficial virus and not a virus that would spread disease. It actually is a virus that helps them with their longevity. And which I think is a cool concept. And to be perfectly honest, I mean, even in our lives today, yes, we have viruses that are very detrimental to our health. There's the rhinovirus, the common cold. There's, I think influenza is a virus for the most part, even though it can turn bacterial and become bronchitis later, if whatever. But there's a whole bunch of things. Obviously, HIV and HPV and all these things. They're all viral, and they're all, you know, born on viruses and things, and they harm us. But and I don't have any specific examples, but there are actually viruses that help us as well. I mean, obviously there's bacteria that help us. We have a whole microbiome in our bodies of bacteria and viruses and everything, and a lot of them work together and keep us healthy, because if we're healthy, they're healthy. So this is kind of a mutual beneficial thing going on there. But some viruses are just mean and nasty and make us sick. But I figured, you know, if some viruses in our current world can be good for our health, then, you know, why can't I have a super virus that can help repair telomeres on an alien planet in 10,000 years? So that was one example of my doing research and actually coming up with a better solution for where I wanted to go with the story. And so that's another thing, is like just coming up with ideas for stories. So far I have 2 original novels that I've written. They're all part of the same series, but beyond that I've written, or I'm working on, I've written 52 complete fan fiction works, and I have 3 still work in progress. And so you can tell, and I've been working on these for 2.5 years now, almost 2 3/4 years now, because I started posting fanfiction stories in March of 2015. So it's past the 2.5 years at this point. But between my 2 novels and my fanfiction stories, I've written 800,000 words of fiction. And I just keep getting these story ideas, and they just won't stop coming. And a lot of that has to do with how my brain works. And I'm just kind of sitting around thinking about one thing, and all of a sudden I think about another thing, and I'm like, oh, that would be a really great story idea. Let me start writing. And that's where a lot of my story ideas, sometimes, because a lot of my fan fiction comes from, obviously, things that I'm a fan of, the fandoms I'm a part of. Dragon Age, the video game, has been my greatest source of inspiration. Whenever I'm playing the game, I'm constantly, because I get really into the storyline and the lore of the game, and there's just so much, it's such a rich, story-rich environment in this game. It's not just a big shoot 'em up or first-person shooter or anything like that. It's a very story-driven game, and you have all these interactions with your companions that follow you around, and you can hear them having conversations behind you as you're adventuring in the world, and you have different interactions. You can have romances with some of them, and it just sparks, like, well, you know what, especially once the game is done, you're like, oh gee, what would the game have been like if you could have done this, or if you could have done that instead? So all these different ideas started popping up, and then from there I started coming up with ideas like, oh gee, I wonder how these characters from the game would react if they showed up in our world, and how would they react to technology, and how would they feel about not having magic, and just all these different things. And so I just keep writing these stories because they just keep popping into my head, and I can't seem to shut it off. Not that I want to, but it definitely is driven by the fact that my brain just keeps going in all these different directions, and one story tends to lead to another story, leads to another story, and I'm just constantly just kind of trying to keep up with it all. In fact, I have a notebook now where I'm writing down ideas where I'm like, okay, I have too many stories going on right now. I can't sit down and start another one, but I'm starting to write, because I've actually had a number of ideas that I'm like, okay, I don't have time to write it now, I'll write it later, but I didn't write down the idea, and then I forgot it. I'm like, okay, never mind. I guess it wasn't that good. But I was like, you know what, let me start writing these down, and I may or may not pursue them in the future, and some of them may still interest me in the future and I'll write them, and some of them might not. But anywho, so that's a little bit more of insight into me and my weird brain, and just, you know, how and to explain why I kind of go off in these tangents all the time when I'm telling stories and vlogging and everything, and I can't stick to a strict topic like some YouTubers. A lot of YouTubers are really good at sticking. They have a topic and they stick to that topic, and they flow with it, and they stay focused and everything. Yeah, and it's entirely possible that a lot of that is just editing. Like they maybe they ramble on as much as I do and edit out the irrelevant parts. But I decided you get me as I am, rambles and all. One, because I'm lazy, and two, because, I don't know, this is just who I am, and I just want to present myself as honestly as possible. Some people may or may not believe that that's what I'm doing, but hey, this is who I am. You know, take me or leave me as the case may be. So okay, I think that's enough for this particular vlog. I still have, what, 20, let's see, it's 25 days, and it's day 6 now, so 19 more videos to make. I think I did the math right on that, maybe. But we have a ways to go, so I'm sure there's plenty of other things I can talk about in this month. So until tomorrow, take care. Bye-bye.